day 17 of Elul. I am Shifra Hendry, and I am in the middle of a somewhat disjointed series on 11 steps to return to your supernatural self. And I mean it. I really, really mean it. That's what it's about right now. So I'm broadcasting from the conference room in my building. I missed a couple of days from being a little under the weather, but here I am back. So there may be interruptions, there may be people coming in there. I think there's an echo, and it's all okay. We don't wait for perfection. Life is now. And leaning in before you're ready, when the circumstances aren't exactly the way you want them to be, that's one of the big keys. So the topic of today is the keys to your supernatural self. So I'm going to tell you 3 stories from my own life. I'll make them pretty quick, that illustrate how this actually works. But the principle here is something that the mystical Torah, Kabbalah, Chassidus calls Yerida L'Tzarech Aliyah, which means a descent on behalf of a much greater ascent. A couple of the archetypal analogies to describe how this works are pulling back the string on a bow, which causes the arrow to fly way faster and farther than it otherwise would. Another one is bouncing a ball, especially if you ever had a Super Ball. Super Balls were popular quite a while ago. You bounce the ball with a certain amount of force and it flies up higher than where it started from when you cast it down. That's the idea. The idea is that through going down or through challenges, darkness, things that stand in the way, the hidden realms, you can actually go higher. And the reason for this is because some powers, some lights, some abilities, some truths are so vast that the ordinary consciousness can't contain them, that the ordinary structure of a human being can't really express them. So in order for those to be released, there have to be new vessels. And those new vessels, a vessel is anything that holds light, really anything that reveals a potential. So those vessels come not through linear change, not through you were born that way, but those vaster powers come from overcoming challenges. What does it mean by overcoming? What do I mean by overcoming? So I don't just mean that we push through and we get to the other side. I mean that we have to sometimes go deeper into our own selves, deeper, 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 find that sovereign life force, that absolute commitment, that absolute insistence on getting through to a deeper level of life, getting through something, not letting it take you down, not being stopped when things get hard. So when this happens, and usually it doesn't happen unless we're very pressed, unless there's a lot of pressure from either from inside or from a situation from outside. Rising pressure forces a shift. That's something I'll talk about on another occasion more. But the point is that when you're forced to go in and to find that deeper power to overcome, to get through, to break through, to burst past, what's happening is you are creating in real time a vessel, a container, a challenge that allows that potential that is latent in your soul to come online. Once it comes online, it's part of your nature. It might feel like you have to go way beyond your nature in order to get to it. That's part of it. You're going beyond your fixed nature into your supernatural potential. But once you bring it out, once it has a vessel, meaning you thought about it, you had the courage to break through, you took action, now it exists in the physical world. It exists as part of you. So I'm going to give you a few stories. Sometimes, sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words. So just so that you understand how this works, I'm going to share 3. So one of these stories happened when I was in high school, and I had a friend whose mother had left her and her brothers, and she was very distraught. Obviously, there was no warning. They're with their father, who was very loving, but it wasn't expected and it wasn't ideal. Anyway, my mother was very compassionate and friendly and whatever, took her in, which I thought was great. She slept in my room, and we were friends, so that was fine. But what happened? I was a year older. Over the course of time, it started to feel like a week, 2 weeks. It started to feel like I had no space at all. I had no space in my room. I had no space at the dinner table, any social event or friend event that I went to that I had to invite her. At first I wanted to, but then I started to feel deeply compressed, and I started to get more and more resentful. And this went on for another week. After about the third week, I felt like I was going to explode. And I didn't know what to do. At the time, I was very inarticulate. I was not good at expressing anything, much less feelings. I wasn't really aware of the whole idea of feelings. The way I'd been brought up, I had my own definite issues and challenges from very, very early age, like a lot of anger around me and from my father, unexpressed, but I felt it, judgment from the age of like 1. So I was already compressed, but the pressure grew. Rising pressure creates a shift, forces a shift. The pressure grew so much that I really didn't have a choice. I felt like I couldn't survive another day. So I pulled up courage that I did not have. I was shy. I was insecure. I was unconfident, like in an extreme. I hate to use the term, but if there's an inferiority complex, I had it. And nevertheless, it was survival. So I told her, Linda, I've got to speak to you. We have to talk. So we made an appointment in school at lunch. And I walked into the lunchroom, heart pounding like crazy, sat down at the table. She walked in. I had told myself, rehearsed over and over and over again. How am I going to say? What am I going to say? It's going to hurt her feelings. She's not going to understand. I'm bad. I'm not good. I felt I hope you can maybe relate to this. I felt an awful combination of resentment and intimidation, terror, really. So I was sweating and my heart was pounding, but I had told myself, after obsessively thinking about how I was going to say what I had to say, I couldn't come up with an answer. I told myself that I would say the first 5 words, and then whatever happened would happen. So those first 5 words were something like, Linda, I've been feeling, something like that. Maybe that's 4 words. But anyway, so the words came out, sweat pouring down my face, and all of a sudden a dam broke. And I found myself connected to the words, and I was able to express to her what I felt, and I was able to do it well. And of course her feelings were hurt, like who wouldn't be hurt? But she understood, and we became much closer friends. We were friends for many years after that. But that's, to me, in my life trajectory, that's almost a side effect, and a beautiful one. But the real effect was that I went from inarticulate, terrified, unexpressed, out of touch with my feelings, to the exact opposite. Exact opposite. This is an area of major mastery for me. I understand my feelings. I understand everybody else's feelings. I know how to express things. It's one of my areas of, as we say, one of my areas of genius, one of my areas of superpower. Speech, emotional understanding, connection, expression, transmission. This is story number 1. Story number 2, when I was, first few years that I was married, I had 2 little children, 3 and 2, almost 4 and almost 3. And then I had a couple of miscarriages, then I had a baby. And the baby was damaged by malpractice. You may have heard me talk about this before. I don't talk about it so often, but the cord was choking her. The midwife wasn't prepared. There was no oxygen in the room. There was no doctor nearby. It was a hospital where I'd had my 2 other kids and the same midwife. So I didn't expect any of that, but it was completely like she was left with no oxygen for a very long time during the birth and after the birth. And so I was really I was very distraught. Obviously, there's no way to describe it. But at that same time, more or less at that same time, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, whose neighborhood I lived in, my spiritual mentor for millions, mine, so he announced that completely unexpectedly, that he basically said, I've done everything I can to bring Mashiach, to bring the Geula, the redemption, and it's Hevel Arik. It's nothing because Mashiach didn't come. Mashiach being the Hebrew word for the Messiah. The Torah mandated Messiah. So he said, all I can do is give it over now to you. Do whatever you can. And I was not inarticulate at that time, but I was very insecure. Like in this, my next weakest point was, I'm not part of this. Like, I'm not a leader. I didn't grow up in this religious thing. I don't know the language. I don't know the culture. I don't have the learning. I don't have the connections. I'm not old enough. There are people that are, the big people, the leaders, they're the ones, and I expected them to do something, but they didn't. Like crickets. I went to the 770, the Grand Synagogue in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I walked in and I thought it would be packed with thousands of people discussing what to do. There was nobody there. I'm like, what the heck? And it didn't take very long until I started to try to push my more powerful, friends and acquaintances to meet with each other so they could figure out what to do. I was out of the picture. But within a week of that happening, I ended up on some kind of committee, and what emerged was that it must be that the baby soul was pushing me. I'm sure. I have no doubt about that, actually. But it ended up that I became a driving force for the entire global community. And I ended up working with other people, but we ended up getting international press and creating massive events and changing the culture and changing the mindset. So if you think that Chabad is crazy because of their beliefs about the Rebbe, you can look right here and you can put some blame right here, a lot of it. But why did that happen? I don't think it's crazy, but if you do, why did that happen? Because I was desperate, because my soul was on fire. It was shaking from what had happened to me, because when I heard the Rebbe's words, I heard that this doesn't have to happen anymore. There doesn't have to be sickness and suffering and death and loss and pain. And I was, it like a flame woke up in me, burst forth in me, and it never went out. It's been, tamped down, risen up, but I could not stop trying to make things happen. And when I realized that the field was empty, I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. And the Rebbe gave me the people I worked with, a tremendous amount of encouragement, unprecedented, for everything that we did. And I could never see myself again the same way that I had before, as the insecure, not connected, not really part of the community, a little bit of an outsider who came in, no real power, no real influence. All of a sudden, I was walking down the street and people would say, Shifra Chana, we have to make this happen, and you're the only one who can do it. All of a sudden, within that community, I became internationally known. Okay, I still felt incredibly insecure in my personal life, but what I learned from that, the extraordinary superpower that came out, was that if I am connected to a cause that's bigger than me, I can have supernatural success. So that was the second illustration. The third one was more recent, let's say 2009, 2010, when I felt I felt incompetent in terms of building any kind of influence myself. Yes, interacting with the Rebbe, getting ideas from things the Rebbe said, convincing other people, going to the Rebbe, getting blessings, then that would bring people to work with me. Those things that I already did, but I never occurred to me that it was me, that I had a real part in it. It just felt like, I had lent myself to a supernatural cause, and it worked. But in 2009, at the end of 2009, we found, my husband and I, that we were in a terrible financial situation with 5 kids. Still, our kids were still all, at home dependent. Some were little. My husband lost his job. We were deep in debt from religious school tuitions and whatever else. And we'd been using credit cards, and Chase raised our minimum payment by 250% and would not negotiate. Anyway, I'm going to skip a lot of that story, but I experienced internal shifts where I came to peace with whatever would be, and I let go of needing something to happen. Anyway, in that period of time, I ended up, not only did our debt get paid off, but at fractions of what it was, but I ended up getting, I want to say, dragged into a course. It was almost like being dragged. I'm not going to tell the whole story here. because just for time, into a course on joint venture telesummits. I didn't know what a joint venture was. I did not know what a telesummit was. I had no experience. I tried for a couple of years, actually. Well, it didn't start out on video, it started out with audio, but it took me years of practicing in front of the camera, deleting to get, it's a video, to get a video that looked normal. Anyway, I had no experience of any of it, but the person who was teaching it was so persuasive and somehow so wanted. She was following me by email, my small email list. She liked my articles that I wrote on authentic Kabbalah and transformation, and she felt moved. Not a Jewish woman, wonderful woman, Ellen. Anyway, she felt moved to help me, so she almost hounded me. She actually did hound me to take her class and promised me extra support and private if I needed it. And it was expensive, and we didn't have the money, and we were in debt, the credit card, remember? But I mean, it was expensive for me. It was like $1,500. And I said, no. She called me, I think 6 times. And I said, no. The 7th time, she called, she said, I'm giving up on you. I see it's not right for you. So I stopped after she hung up, and I'm like, wait, I think I have to do this. I had no idea. She did explain to me what telesummits were and what joint ventures were, but and I kind of had a topic, I thought alternative healing, I'm really into that. Anyway, long story short, I did my first interview with a woman who had Pat Carrington. She taught tapping. She's one of the innovators. She's not here anymore, but she fortunately for me, because I'd never done an interview in my life, I'd never hosted anything. There's so many. I put the whole story about this in my book, like how I got the first speaker and the second speaker, how I ended up with high profile people, like the way it fit together, crazy. But that's not the point for today. The point is superpowers. So she had given me a whole script, like you'll say this, I'll say that. So it was the easiest first interview ever. But anyway, what happened was I had no idea of the potential of the summits, or that I would end up with a reputation for doing deep interviews, or that my listeners would say to me, why don't you teach? Why don't you create a program? We want to hear more from you, all of that. And what ended up happening, which I did not, I started doing this because I wanted to build my list. I had a tiny little list. I wanted to market coaching. And I was writing these articles and posting them online, and it was labor intensive and didn't bring back so much. But anyway, so I didn't know that I could make money. And when I made my first summit, I ended up making $11,000, $17,000, I don't remember, but it was like totally shocking. I mean, that was before expenses, but totally shocking to me. And for a while, when summits were still going up, that was happening. And I, instead of knowing that I don't know how to handle money, and that I don't know how to do business, and that I'm not capable, and I can never be successful, and which I grew up with from age 0, all of a sudden I was successful. And how did that happen? So why did I do that? Why did I do the summits? Why did I sign on? Because I was desperate again, because I needed to do something, because I needed to build my list, because it just wasn't working. But what ended up happening was a breakthrough that was quantum levels bigger than anything that I'd expected. Now it's easy for me. I keep thinking I should teach summits, because it's almost like breathing. I understand these things so much on the inside. And this is the principle. So those are the stories. There are a lot more stories like that. And I'm sure you have stories of your own that illustrate this principle. I'll end with one thing that Shar Yichud talks about pretty much everything. Shar Yichud being the premier text that I teach from in the Gate of Unity. We do text learning, deep dive that just is soul illuminating, literally transforms the physical brain. And we do transformational work in each class, hot off the press, cutting edge, becoming supernatural transformational work. If you want to check out the program, the link is in the description here on the video. In any case, Shari Yichud describes in one place that every light, every potential has to have a vessel, has to have a container. So, like I said, so when God's desire is to give us something positive, and he gives it to us in a happy vessel, like, you got a present from your aunt and it paid your rent, or, whatever it is. When there's a loving gift that's coming to you and it's in a loving vessel, that's wonderful. We all want that. But that doesn't create transformation. That gives you some kind of asset or resource that makes you a little bit bigger, a little bit richer, a little bit more comfortable, than you were before, a little more peaceful. But when God wants to give you something, this works if you want to give someone else something too, a parent with a child. But when God wants to give you something that doesn't just slightly or temporarily lift you up, but that actually transforms you in a quantum level, that opens up a superpower inside of you that is too vast, has no vessels. So first he'll give you that in a vessel that is not kind, that doesn't look kind. So the light, the intention is kindness. It's like when simple example, somebody disciplines their child out of love because otherwise they're in danger. The kid runs into the street or turns on the burner and the parent, says no, and the kid doesn't listen. So, a little smack or put you in your room, that's love, but it doesn't feel like love to the child. Or when you go to the gym and you force yourself to feel the burn, that's love. But if you didn't understand why you were doing it, it wouldn't feel like love. So these are simple examples of the opposite vessel. So you want to do something good, you're doing kindness. It's love expressing, but the vessel is not loving. So when God does that, when he wants to give us not just a gift that will help alleviate, the situation a little bit, or that will lift us up a little bit, and those exist too, and those are great, those are wonderful. But when God wants to turn on or help you to turn on an actual superpower, usually it will be in the form of a challenge. Everything that I just described here, and I think pretty much every breakthrough that I've had on this quantum level has been through a challenge. Why is that? Because the challenge, the darkness, you read it, remember, the greatest light is in the darkness. The bow on the string on the bow shoots the arrow forward. The bouncing of the ball sends it way up high. So this is the idea that a challenge will actually, it's designed cosmically, any kind of challenge, but especially the ones that you cannot handle. Like, no, I can't have this person sleeping in my room and coming with me everywhere and have no minute of peace, even though I love her. I can't do it. No, I'm desperate. Can I talk? No. Am I terrified? Yes. Is my heart pounding? Yes. Is sweat pouring down my face? Yes. I want to tell you, before I did my first ever online class, I literally had to send my husband and all my kids out of the house for the day because I couldn't stand, and I was so nervous, doesn't describe it. Had to keep going to the bathroom. I was sweating. Again, when I started that first class, it took me 2 years to work up to it. This was before summits, and I didn't know what to say. I mean, I had too much to say. So I didn't know, should I start with this? Should I start with that? If I say this, I'll lose. And I used to lie in bed for an hour before going to sleep, thinking about how I would do this class if I ever had the guts. And the way I finally did it was I had to schedule it. And I scheduled it for 3 months out. And I watched people sign up. It was a free class. And then when the day approached, as it approached, I got more and more nervous, but I was committed. And this is a big key, by the way. This is a big secret, to commit yourself in public to something you're not ready for. I committed myself to doing 11 steps for Elul, or I wouldn't be on today from the conference room in the morning, because once I stop, I'm just like, it's not the right time. I don't have the right energy, whatever it is. So I'd committed myself. And when the time came, I also had written some notes. After agonizing, I would just read just to get started, because I could not imagine that I would actually be able to speak naturally. Actually, my mother was on the phone at the time, and she sent me a text. It sounds like you're reading. But that was my first breakthrough. And once it happened, at the first 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, it started to flow. And I got so much positive feedback. One person told me I took 10 pages of notes. I don't understand what you said, but it was fascinating. That was my first class that I ever taught. I'm just telling you how the paradigm works. The paradigm when you are meant to use your ordinary powers, then you'll get, a good education, you'll get a nice mentor, you'll get, some money, a partner, whatever it is. When you're meant to unleash your extraordinary supernatural powers, which is what I'm about, what this is about, what this time is about, what these challenges are about, what the chaos is about, your supernatural powers, they will come in the form of a challenge. Meaning the supernatural power is wrapped inside the challenge. It's a light inside the vessel of the challenge. The opposite vessel doesn't look kind, but that is because when you have the opposite vessel, instead of going out, you go in, and there you find the potential in your soul to break through in ways that you could never have imagined that you would do. I'm telling you, this happened to me over and over and over and over again. In case you think that this was, that now this is easy for me, more or less. I mean, sometimes I have to really push myself, and sometimes I feel like I have nothing to say. And sometimes I say something and I'm like, that was just the same thing I say every day. It's totally boring. And often I just feel like I don't want to be seen. Maybe it's past life. I just leave me alone. The challenge doesn't have to be from the outside. It doesn't have to be, a relationship that's breaking. It doesn't have to be, deep debt and where's your money going to come from? It doesn't have to be like that. It could be, like they say, you hit bottom and you make the change. Rising pressure forces the shift, but you can raise the bottom. It can be that when you feel like you're sitting on your potential and there's more to you and life is passing by and it's getting really, really weird too. And you at some point say to yourself, like I did when I finally taught that first class, I can't take it. I'm not gonna never share what I just can't take it. So then you find a way to scaffold yourself, meaning to hold your intention while you're not ready for it. So you create an artificial external vessel. Like in my case, there was a new thing that came online in the coaching industry. This was before people were doing videos, this was when was this? Probably in the early 2000s, somewhere in the early 2000s. Anyway, so as I said, I committed myself to the class. I created a description before I even had the class. I cannot tell you how many times I've created courses before they existed, because that's the only way for me. Some people are very orderly and organized and they build something and they launch it, and that's not it for me, because I'm constructed on the external way and brought up from a very small child externally, superficially, the opposite of my true purpose, the opposite. Not in every way, I was always I always had a certain nurturing personality and liking to help people and the ability to, kind of is to help my friends with their homework. But I felt like a complete loser. All in high school, I was the outcast. Nobody was mean to me per se, but I was mean to myself. But even that was a breakthrough. In 12th grade, I felt so bad about myself and so angry about it and not being able to dress like other people and, was a little overweight, whatever. I've never said this online ever. Almost not online. I almost every day, as a rebellion, as of my 12th grade, I went to school wearing stretch pants, the same ones, or maybe I had two pairs and I alternated them, and a shirt and a windbreaker. And that's what I did. I'm not dressing for you. So I was weird, but there were two people that were in my grade that were popular, Candy and Mike. They were both popular and they both thought I was really cool. So I started to be friends with them. And there are other things that happened coming out of challenge, coming out of not being enough, that allowed me to break through. Like I was so unpopular then, but at that point in life, things switched. I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but the same kind of story, so that it became so easy for me to make friends. Like I never worry if somebody's going to like me or not. Yeah, they'll like me, most of the time anyway. So that is the opposite. I was the opposite. So I want you to consider, it's fun to tell stories, actually. I almost never do this, but you can tell me if you like it. I didn't advertise this. It's morning in Israel, so it's night in America. So I don't even know. Actually, I have some people online. Leave me some comments. You guys tell me if you like it. Also, if you listen to the replay, I do like the stories. But the point is, you're the same. How do you know if your identity, your way of being is actually the opposite of your superpowers and who you are here to be, what you're here to reveal? It's what you want. What you want. If you feel like you're sitting on something that should come out, if you have something to contribute, if you have potential that you haven't expressed, if you're here for more, if life should be more, if you feel like that, I'm telling you, and you're standing and you're sitting on it, you're not walking forward with it, that it's an opposite. The vessel, the way that you experience yourself, maybe what you've been told by others, maybe what you've seen in reality, those are the vessels that are the opposite of what's there waiting to be formed for your superpowers to come out. Your superpowers mean things that you are able to do, be, experience, have, achieve, that were impossible for the previous version of you. So I'll leave it at that. I may even come on later because I'm two steps behind. Now I'm one step behind actually it's still two because this was today. I missed Monday and Tuesday. Of the 11 steps to returning to your supernatural self. And I just want to say again, if you're interested in working with me in a small group setting for the most ridiculously affordable price that I've ever offered anything like that at, delving deep into the texts, a library of almost 2,000 hours of transformational courses and text learning, and 2 hours, it's officially 90 minutes, but it's almost always 2 hours, 3 times a month of personal, upfront, close interaction with me, a soul community. We have office hours run by my senior student professional coach. I teach on Mondays. She does office hours on Tuesdays. There's a whole community that goes there and shares their insights and works on healing and gets coaching and asks questions. This is a high touch program, and it is not priced like a high touch program. And so if you want to check that out, gateofunity.com/GGG. The GGG is capital G, or you won't get the site. There's no www, just gateofunity.com/capital G, capital G, capital G. It's also in the description under the video. Anyway, look at your life. It's Elul. It's the 17th day of Elul, 17. It's a special number. 17 is the gematria of Tov, which is good. Means good. So the 17th of Elul tonight is High Elul, which is the 18th of Elul, which is a portal of mystical Torah. Maybe I'll get on and talk about that later. Being released into the world. Because the mystical Torah is what's here to transform. It's what's here to bring out the extraordinary through the challenges and the chaos. So that's what's happening in the world. That's what's got to happen with each of us. This is how the system is designed. By system, I mean creation, human being, God being. This is how it's designed. We are literally melting down now as caterpillars and ready to reconstitute into butterflies. That's what the supernatural is about. I am so serious when I say supernatural. I am, I don't know. I always think I'm more finished than I am, but it seems like I'm like a few hours of editing away from releasing on my website, my quantum soul imprinting ebook that's hot off the press, which contains the formula for how to shift from caterpillar to butterfly. And how do I know this formula? Reverse engineered, and also understanding through the mystical Torah and how things work, but also through my own life, also through, the experience I've had, my students have had. Anyway, it works if you work it. So stay tuned for that. My book, Soulfire, Activate the Sacred Powers of Your Quantum Self, is out for endorsements with some special people, and the cover is almost designed. And if I don't drag my feet and other people don't drag their feet, hopefully it'll be out within the next 3-4 months. Very exciting. Anyway, I'll see you later. Thanks. If you like this, comment, like, share, and tell me what. Let me actually check the chat. There are not many. Thank you. I'm getting some nice comments here. Tell me if you've had, since we do have some people live, and even if you're listening to the replay, which most people do, I want to hear from you. Tell me if you've had this experience. Tell me if you've ever had the experience of, no, please, this isn't, I know some of my experiences have been, as I shared one of them, some of them have been nothing I would ever wish on anybody. And yet, after the fact, I'll tell you, my brother, I'm in a talking mood this morning. My brother, Michael, Oliver Shalom, I have 2 brothers younger than me. Michael was the one closer to me in age. And he got sick all of a sudden in 2002. And he had 4 very small children and a lovely wife. And he got sick, and in 5 months he was gone. Maybe it was a little less. And I was trying, catch up. I was living in another city, but I was working with a homeopath, trying to get him to do alternatives, trying to do what I could. This was before I did summits, but that's where my interest, I've been interested in alternative health for many decades, and energy healing and supernatural healing, because it's real. But my brother, was only at the last moment he started to be open to those things, so nothing really helped. But I wrote to the homeopath that I was working with after he passed away. It was such a shock to my system. Such a shock. I'm sure many people, unfortunately, know what I mean. And the homeopath said, good things come out of tragedy. I see it all the time. And although that's a horrible thing to hear, it's true. We don't want tragedy. And here's the other thing. I said I was going to leave. I'm waiting for you guys to comment on your own situations where you release supernatural powers in challenge. Extraordinary powers, let's say, even if not supernatural. Superpowers, that's the topic here. But that was the point. I was in so much trauma, PTSD from this, and it wasn't my first loss. I sat down I had a desk then in the recreation room, was really a rec, in the house that we used to live in New Jersey. And my computer was there, my desktop. And I remember sitting every day I'd sit there, and I'd be more frozen than I was the day before. And all I could think of was, it's supposed to be redemption. What happened? I could cry now thinking about it. Now you know from my story a little bit about how I poured myself in to that whole thing. And it's very relevant to now and to everything we see in the world, because there have to be vessels. Redemption is in process. God is all ready to give us everything we want. Rosh Hashanah is coming up. Elul is more than half over now. In Rosh Hashanah, an entirely new light comes into the world. What's it going to be? Who are you going to be? As vessels, as rising, expanding vessels to contain that light, because without the vessels, the light has no place to land. By light, again, I mean potential. God is ready to redeem us, you, me, the world, but without the vessels, there's no place for redemption to land. So what are we getting instead? Chaos, breakdown, rabbit holes, disclosure, ETs, government corruption, war. And these things are all prophecy. What is the point? It creates a breakdown. It creates a chaos, an that allows for, this is in the quantum ebook, between every 2 states, like very different quantum states, different operating systems, different fields of reality. There has to be an in a chaos. There has to be a breakdown in between. Another take on this, but it's the same idea. So who are you going to be? What are you going to do to create new vessels to help give the light of redemption, the potential for supernatural miracles to land in the world and stop this BS that is killing people? We can do that. We can stop it. But not through our ordinary powers, and certainly not through being passive victims. And this is one of the reasons why I am pushing on, pressing on, harping on, pounding on the potential for being supernatural in every way. By the way, the Rebbe said that this is one of the things that we have to do. We have to be making miracles by our nature. Every day must be miraculous, literally, compared to the day before. How do we do that? Going beyond our nature. Causes nature to go beyond its nature. You want a miracle? Go beyond your nature. The world is an out projection of you. You're making a new vessel that allows something more supernatural to land. I hope you're tracking with me. I want to see more comments. So what are you going to do? And do you want to be supernatural? Or do you want to just go on the way it's going on and just numb out or freak out? That's not an option I choose. Anyway, I'll be very honest with you. I wish we had not come to this. I wish this hadn't been the timeline. I mean, it's better than some other timelines. Thank God it's maybe a lot better. But, there are a lot of could have beens in the Torah. There are a lot of moments of missed opportunity. And what is the reason for that? No vessels, not enough vessels. The vessels come from us. So the missed opportunity is not really a missed opportunity per se. It's God's timeline moving forward, hitting a place where it could come into full manifestation and shift everything, but the vessels aren't there. We're not ready. In other words, we're not tuned in. We're just somewhere else, doing something else, feeling bad about ourselves, feeling bad about life, feeling disempowered. Believe me, I know the feeling. I visit it very, very frequently, sometimes daily. But I know better. I know better, and I've lived differently. Someday I should probably do this before. I've probably forgotten most of the miracles that happened. Just remember some of the big ones. But supernatural, it's not such a big deal because we're already supernatural. But we're wired to believe that we're not. We're wired to believe in the laws of nature. It's just a matrix. And the Torah says this clearly. The laws of nature are just God hiding himself. There's no laws. It's only God. It's God's desire and yours. As a soul, you represent the feminine aspect of God, the Shekhinah. You're a piece of it. So the laws of nature are just here to fool us into thinking, to create a nature that we have. You have your own laws of nature. Oh, I'm not good at talking. I wasn't good at talking. I can't express my feelings. I don't even know what they are. I didn't know what they were. I couldn't express them. I'm not a leader. I wasn't a leader. I was as far from a leader as you could get. I'm not comfortable speaking. Are you kidding me? In public. I don't know how to do business. I wasn't brought up that way. I was probably the most insecure, let's say in the bottom 10% at least, maybe bottom 5%. Of people that, in terms of worldly things, my core, there are a few core limiting beliefs that people have. The core is something's wrong. Something's wrong with me. Something's wrong with this. Something's wrong with you. Something's wrong with all of it. But then there are a few flavors that we take, that each of us has a primary. We all have something of most of them. But anyway, I'm not enough. I don't have what it takes. That's one. I'm not good enough, which is more about performance. And then I'm not lovable. Those are the core beliefs. So mine was, and maybe yours is too. I'd love to hear what yours is. I say love, but yeah, I'm interested. I'm not enough. I don't have what it takes. Now that's quantum. These beliefs, they precede anything that you actually want or try to do in your life. It's like my dad used to say that he used to talk about free floating anxiety or free floating hostility. Like like if I was in a bad mood, he'd say, you have free floating hostility. Like you're looking for something to make you mad. So when you have one of these beliefs, I'm not lovable, you're looking for something to prove that you're not lovable, consciously and mostly subconsciously, and your cells are wired that way, and your brain is wired that way. This live is getting way more complicated than I expected, but I'm on a roll. Anyway, so you're broadcasting that out into the field, also in the Quantum Soul Imprinting ebook. When you broadcast a signal into the field, it brings back, because your consciousness is co-creating. So if you grow up, if you're molded by I'm not lovable, before you are even conscious enough to even think about it, it's reality for you. And it's going to become reality in your life circumstances, because that's what gets created. And then you have the proof. You don't realize that it's retroactive to the broadcast, but then you have the proof that you're not lovable, and you could go on and, convince anybody in the world that you're not lovable, or you can't find love. That's one of them. And then I'm not good enough. No matter what you do, you don't get the approval. But it's free floating. It precedes the experience. So when you have, like I do, I'm not enough, I don't have what it takes, you wake up in the morning and it doesn't matter what you want, or you go to sleep at night, or you can't sleep at night. It doesn't matter what you want. You can't do it. You're not enough. You're going to fail. It's written in the stars. So I need to be supernatural. I'm joking, but I'm not joking. That's the only thing that's ever worked for me. Because when you are not enough, you've got to find a way to be more. And that, my friends, creates literal new vessels for your soul's supernatural powers. And that is why you are here. Happy 17th of Elul. I'll see you later.